Hi everybody, it's Andrea Villneff here. I am a nutrition and food educator. I'm really excited today to be here with Think Beef Cooking 101, where we're just going over some basic food skills, all that kind of thing. And the recipe that we are cooking along with today is golden beef and rice. So this is a super tasty recipe, lots of these Middle Eastern spices that taste absolutely fantastic. Before we get started, I've been doing this for the past couple of years. I go into schools and I teach kids basic food skills, knife skills, food literacy, all of those important things that you are going to need throughout your life. So jumping into the recipe, first things first, whenever you are doing a recipe, you want to make sure that you have your hair up if you have long hair. You can grab an apron. I'm not going to put on an apron today, but if you want to keep your clothes a little bit cleaner, you can put an apron on. You need to wash your hands for 20 seconds, at least 20 seconds, with warm water and as well as soap, obviously, and then dry them off afterwards. Okay, that's about the time it takes to sing happy birthday, if you're wondering. In addition, if you are new to cooking, something that I highly recommend is that you have the recipe printed off. So right here you can see we have the golden rice and beef recipe. This resource, you can grab it if you go to thinkbeef.ca, as well as getting the recipe as well as the shopping list. You can also take a look at these videos that kind of show you basically how-to videos on how to cook. And also, so just wanted to start off a little piece of this recipe. You can see that one of the ingredients that you need is big batch beef, okay? So if you go back to previous videos we've done before when we were doing our summer cooking program, it'll be posted. We went over how to make big batch beef. So this is what big batch beef looks like. So before you even get into making the recipe, I do suggest that you go through and you make the big batch beef in advance. Looking at this recipe, you can see right here that it is 4 pounds of extra lean or lean ground beef and 4 each of cooking onions and cloves of garlic. So you can see that it is already kind of seasoned with those delicious flavors. You want to cook it in a big kind of Dutch oven pot, a big pot. Something like this would work as well. Kind of what we're doing our recipe in today. So you just cook it until the meat is all brown or till a temperature of 71 degrees Celsius has been reached. 71 and done. So those are the important things right there. So I've already pre-made mine for this recipe. There we go. Ooh. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I pre-made part of this recipe just so to move things along a little quicker, because it is definitely one of those recipes where there's some sitting time where you can go off and do other things. Okay, so I went over the big batch beef. This is super easy to freeze as well, so you can put it in the freezer in little individual portion-sized containers. So it really makes it easy to cook throughout the week because you already have your meat prepared and ready to go. So it just makes recipes go that much faster when you're in a bit of a time crunch. Okay, so starting off with this recipe, I'm going to start, you can see I have my pot here. I'm going to start heating the butter. There we go. It's about a tablespoon of butter right there. And while that's heating, I'm going to come over and I'm going to show you how to cut an onion. So this is a chef's knife. Food safety, already what I've done is I have secured the cutting board to make sure it doesn't slide around at all by putting a damp towel underneath. So everything is secure. And then what you want to do is keep your fingers tucked. And I'm just going to cut the ends off. But really the trick with these trickier vegetables, like onions, they're very round. So your goal is that you want to make a flat surface as like as early as possible, okay? There we go. So now we have our flat surface. We just peel off the skins. There we go. Peel off the skins. Whoop. Also, just another good tip in general is it's always nice to have a bowl that can be used to just keep all your scraps in it. This is a chef tip that's very common, just so to keep your workstation tidy. That also helps with food safety, and it just looks better, reduces the amount of time it takes to clean up at the end of the day as well. Okay, there we go. Butter is slowly heating up. So what I'm doing here is I am just making sure my fingers are out of the way. And I am cutting the onion into smaller pieces. Remember, always, always, always make the claw so that all of your fingers are tucked back and safe. That way you know, you can see right here, nothing will ever get cut, right? So always have that claw going on whenever you're using a knife to keep your fingers safe, okay? And you can see that creates a nice little dice. And you can see what I'm doing is I'm keeping the tip of the knife on the board and I'm cutting with the heel of the knife, okay? Another good way to do this is if you are a beginner, which this is what this is geared at, so it's just a chopping technique. It keeps your fingers completely out of the way, so it's a very safe way to use a knife, okay? So really pay attention to this technique. So really all you want to do, keep your fingers clawed. So this is the first technique. You have a lot of control here. There we go. But if you want to pick it up a little bit, what you can do is put your finger on the edge of this knife and you just drop the heel of the knife down. And this is just rough chopping. You can make things as small as you want using this technique, which is really nice. So that's why I highly recommend this to beginners, because it's just a good way to chop things quickly, but also in a very safe manner. And once again, to master this cutting technique, what you want to do is you want to keep the tip of the knife on the board, and you're just running the back of the knife through it, okay? And then your fingers are well out of the way. They're not on the cutting board at all. So you know you are good to go. There you go, and you see that you can kind of get some similar results right there. There we go, so the onions are nice and done. I'm just gonna go get a bowl because I'm gonna show you guys how to do the garlic a little bit. Sorry, I'm just running over because I'm realizing that I need to plug my little mini burner in. So that's what I'm doing right now. Okay, and this is one of my absolute favorite tips for garlic right here. What you can do is, it's actually easier to take the skin off of these cloves of garlic if you crush it first, okay? So I'm gonna take a bowl and I'm just gonna use that to crush it so that we can then go and chop it into smaller bits. There we go. And there you go. You can see just how easy it now is to take the skin off of these little pieces of garlic. Easy peasy. One of my favorite tips. Once you're more experienced with a knife, you can also do this with a knife. But if you are new to the kitchen, this is a much safer way to get the skin off. And also when you're crushing your pieces of garlic, you know that you're just releasing the juices. Okay, and then sorry, we'll just go on with the chopping method. So you just run that knife through. There we go. and just so easy, and your fingers are nice and safe. So one of my favorite ways to introduce how to use a chef's knife. Okay, there we go. All nicely minced. It's perfect and ready to go. Okay, so we have our burner going and we're just melting the butter now. I'll show you guys. Just slowly starting to melt now. So once that's melted, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stir in the onions as the next step. And we're just gonna cook them until they're slightly browned, essentially. So the butter's melting pretty quickly here. We're looking good. I'll kind of maybe bring this over a touch so that you guys can actually see it a bit more. There we go. So I'm just going to pick this up as an easy way to kind of get things going. And I will put the onions in here. There we go. And then they'll start to have a nice little sizzle going on. Just make sure that all the onions are nicely coated in some butter right here. And then we're just going to get them so that they're ever so slightly browned. That's our goal. In the meantime, so kind of the base to every cuisine is garlic and onion. It's a very common seasoning that's in almost every kind of cuisine around the world. So you will see that absolutely again and again. Something that I did want to go over is I want to talk to you guys a little bit about some Middle Eastern spice blends. So you can see here, I think everybody kind of knows that when you're talking about either like Indian cuisine or Middle Eastern cuisine, any country along the spice routes, you are usually talking about foods that have a little bit more spices in them, a variety of spice. Not necessarily talking about spicy hot, but talking about very flavorful spicings. So I just want to show you guys what is going to go in here. Okay, so we have the onions and the garlic for flavoring. We also have red pepper flakes. We have turmeric right here. Turmeric is fantastic. This is what's actually going to give this dish its golden color. Then we have nutmeg, which is really nice. It kind of adds a slight bitterness to a dish, which is nice because that plays well off of the cinnamon in it, the little bit of cinnamon in it, which is a very kind of sweet flavor at the end of the day. Cinnamon isn't sweet when you taste it on its own, but since its fragrance is so sweet smelling, it comes off as sweet to our senses when we put it in things. Okay, and then we have some ground cardamom, cumin, and salt. So this is going in at the same time as the garlic because we're just going to cook it for around 30 seconds or so. And with the onions, you can see them sizzling, you can hear it. One of the things I really like about this recipe is how absolutely fantastic it smells as well. So every time I'm doing these kinds of recipes, just as soon as the garlic hits the pan and the rest of the spices hit the pan, it just smells absolutely fantastic. So I'm really excited for that. Another thing that I've noticed with Middle Eastern dishes and Indian dishes as well is that when you are using so many different spices, it's actually, you'll notice that if you're making your own recipe, that you have to use almost similar proportions of each spice. So that way it's like no spice necessarily stands out on its own. They all meld together to make something that tastes really delicious. So you really in these dishes, the spices are all working together. You know that I'm a huge advocate for to add flavor to food. You don't have to add additional fat, so you don't have to add a ton of butter. You don't have to add a ton of oil. Spices and herbs are a great way to add so much flavor to your dishes without adding additional calories. There we go. Okay, so these onions are where they need to be. I'll actually show you guys in a minute because I think it's so beautiful. Once all the spices going in, you immediately will see the golden color coming out. So I'll show you guys. So first, the garlic that we just chopped or minced is going to go in. Okay, ready? I can smell that garlic. Everything's going. And the spices that I just highlighted to you guys, it's also going in. There we go. Make sure it all gets in the pan. There we go. So I'll just give that a quick stir. And then I'll let you guys take a look in. You can see that everything's kind of gone a little yellow there, and that's in large part due to the turmeric. And you can see all the spices are kind of cooking, blending together. Fantastic. Woo. But don't breathe it in. If you're leaning over it and you breathe it in, it might make you cough, okay? So be a little cautious there. So, and you just want to kind of have the garlic cook off a little as well as these dried spices. So it's only 30 seconds, quickly cooking them. And next what I'm going to do is I'm going to stir in the rice. I have jasmine rice right here. I'm going to pour that in. That was 1 cup of jasmine rice. And we have 2 cups right here of our big batch beef that's been pre-prepared. And that is so yummy. That's going in too. And I'm just going to stir this up. I'm just kind of cooking away. I'll lift it up to show you guys before we put the broth in. But you can also see something that I do want to put emphasis on is this is a great recipe for flavoring rice as well. It has so many, rice is just so good because it absorbs all of the different flavors. So this recipe is a great example of using the other ingredients within the recipe to flavor the rice. Rice doesn't have to just be a base. It's really delicious if you incorporate it into the dish and allow it to soak up all of those flavors through the cooking process. So here, I'll just lift it up for you guys to take a look. And also something that's great about this recipe is that you can see that there's carbs, there's veggies, there's meat. So there you go, right? And the rice will get fluffier, so there will be more rice. But right now you can see how meaty it looks, how delicious it looks. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to take 2 cups of the beef broth here, and I'm going to pour it in. There we go. So just in general, another good thing for you to know is that usually it is 2 cups of liquid to 1 cup of rice. That's pretty common. For most long grain rices at least. So your long grain rices is like the jasmine rice that we're using today, but it's also the basmati rice. They're just like long grains, very nice and fluffy. So that's generally what the rule is. But if you are using whatever kind of rice you have on hand at home, what I recommend is that you read the ingredients at the back. The instructions on the back of the rice packaging. And just make sure that you are putting the right amount of beef broth or other liquid to the amount of rice that you're using, okay? So that's my tip. What I'm gonna do now is I'm waiting for this to come to a boil. And then once it comes to a boil, what you wanna do is you want to cover it, turn it to low temperature, And then you want to let it sit and cook for 15 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to go over that one more time. It gets brought to a boil, you stir it, you put the lid on, turn it to low, and then you let it sit for 15 minutes and cook for 15 minutes on low. Okay, so that is how I usually make my long grain rice. And then once the 15 minutes is done on the low heat, I leave the lid on and I set it aside for an extra 10 minutes. And that just helps make sure that even more of the liquid is absorbed into the rice. What else do I want to say about this? That is basically how I always cook rice. That's how we're cooking it in this recipe, because basically this dish isn't done until the rice is fully cooked. Okay, so just so you guys know, I'm going to move this to the back because I thought that we're not going to wait 15 minutes here, so it would take a bit longer. So I'm going to move this back, and you'll be able to see that I actually already made this. There we go. So I already prepared, and you can see steaming away still. So this is already just cooked for the 15 minutes. So, and then at the 15-minute mark, what I wanted to do is we're adding in 1 cup of mixed beans. So we're gonna do this quickly because we don't want the steam to like evaporate too quickly. And also we are putting in a cup of frozen green beans. So this is why it's important that we don't let the steam out of this pan, is because with the frozen green beans, you want that steam and that heat to cook it while it's sitting there for around 10 minutes, okay? So we're just gonna quickly put this in. Woo, get in there. And the beans as well. There we go. I'm gonna stir this up so that everything's kind of mingling together. I know this isn't gonna be perfect because I am also kind of showing you guys what this looks like. Maybe you guys will be able to see through the lid. If not, I'll remove it again just to show you. There you go. I think you can see it. Yeah, you can see everything kind of there. And it's just gonna cook for a minute. So very delicious. Couple of things that I want to go over is that, so beans are absolutely fantastic with beef. Beef is super high in iron, super good source of protein, and the beans are like a fantastic source of fiber, so super healthy for you. But on top of that, beans also contain non-hem sources of iron. So it's beef and beans together are absolute superstars, because basically if you pair your beef with your beans, it increases your absorption of the iron from the beans. Sorry, I want to make sure, by 150%. So it absolutely helps you absorb the iron from the beans. So that's why it's so important to mix different foods together, and that's why you can't get all the nutrients you need simply from vitamin pills, because foods are built for us to eat and get our nutrients from. So they have certain nutrients and they help each other if you blend them together. So super cool. So the beans I used were mixed beans from a can. Okay, so what I did is I drained and rinsed them. Okay, so I opened the can and I put it into a sieve, and I just rinsed it all off. Okay, so that's what you want to do if you're working with canned beans. And as mentioned, the green beans that I put in were frozen. So I do like to highlight frozen as well as canned vegetables, because they can be just as healthy for you as fresh vegetables. They keep a lot longer, and they can be actually just as healthy or healthier, simply because they are canned and processed at their peak nutrient value, which is right after they've been picked and they're at their best. Their best nutrition game is on when they are frozen or when they are canned. So the only stipulation that I do like to say is that try and get canned veggies or canned beans those kind of things, with no salt added, and packed in water is best, because some are packed in oil and some have a lot of sodium in them. So just make sure that you are getting things that are packed in water, no sodium added. Okay, so this is just cooking away, and while this is cooking away, I do want to add in, I'll actually put this back here again. There we go. We'll bring it back later when we're gonna do our little taste test. In the meantime, I just want to show you guys. So what I really love about this recipe is that it's a little bit of savory and it's a little bit of sweet. So it's one of my favorite combinations. So we actually top this recipe with honeyed carrots. You don't have to top it with honeyed carrots, but it's a nice little touch. So I'm gonna just turn this burner on here. And once again, I'm going to just melt the butter. There we go. So that will be kind of just cooking down for a minute. And I have some tongs here to kind of push it around if I need to. There we go. So as I was saying, so these delicious, so it's kind of like a mix of sweet and savory. So I just wanted to go a little bit over the sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. So those are the different tastes, really. So for this, I would say that we are definitely covering off the salty, which would be your savory flavor. And then we are doing the bitter, sweet, and umami. So the only thing we're not really doing is the sour, which would be, when you hear chefs talking about acidity, that would be sort of the sour flavor coming into play. So umami is actually, it's basically that meaty flavor. So when something is almost like that very satisfying meatiness, it comes from proteins, but also it can be found in a lot of other vegetables as well. For example, mushrooms is known for being high in umami flavor. So it's really interesting. That's like a newer taste that they've discovered. This is absolutely fantastic in that it covers so many. I would say acidity is the only thing that it's not super high on the list for this specific recipe. But it definitely has a savory. We're about to add a sweetness, and it has the umami. So definitely well on our way. Okay, so our butter is kind of bubbling away. And I'm just gonna add in the carrots here. So I bought the carrots like this, but you can also, they have little nice little tools where you can like julienne them. It's just like a slicer, and it makes it easier. There's a mandolin, a tool that you can use to make them as well. In chef school, they make us use a knife to kind of julienne things. That's part of knife skills. It would take a while, so I recommend either purchasing them this way, or if not purchasing them this way, then you can even just shred them using a cheese grater would work, just to simplify things. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of stir these around in the butter, and you'll see that some liquid is released just because carrots are very like any vegetable, is a large part water. So you will see that is why veggies cook down so much, is because they are very full of water. Okay, so they're kind of absorbing the butter and cooking up, so I'm gonna add the honey in. So I didn't do this trick that I normally do, but you can kind of see here that the honey is gotten a little bit stuck in. If you lightly grease the inside of the bowl with an oil before you pour the honey in, it'll just slide right out, and it's much easier. Okay, so here we go. You see the honeyed carrots cooking away. Okay, there we go. And it's just that simple. We just want them slightly softened there. Okay, so now I'm just gonna make a little bowl for myself of our delicious meal. Okay, so over here, we've given our golden beef and rice lots of time to kind of basically cook those green beans for us. I'm just gonna put this all in a bowl. There we go, so you can see it, nice, beautiful. I'm gonna use the tongs to put a few. So you can mix these right in, or you can just place them on top nicely, depending on how you're serving this meal. And then I'm going to give it a try. It looks so good. Get a little bit of everything in there, including a bean. Yum. So good. I'm so happy I'm having this for lunch. I hope you guys enjoyed cooking along with me today. If you want this recipe, once again, head on over. I hope that you have printed off the recipes for our Think Beef Cooking 101 Cook Along program. I love cooking with you guys at home, so please keep tuning in. We'll keep on doing these. If you need the recipe, or any how-to videos, please go to thinkbeef.ca. And yeah, I hope to see you guys again soon, and thank you for cooking with me today. Okay, bye guys.